It's Friday night. I'm Kathy Van Ness, and you're here with us at the Golden Door with Will Hanigan, who is, believe it or not, a pearl diver and comes from a family of pearl divers and makes exquisite pearls, selling to companies like Mikimoto, perhaps Tiffany's. And so we're going to talk a little bit about pearls tonight. It'll be about a 30-minute conversation. It's going to be really fun. I'm going to walk away with a whole new knowledge about pearls. Diamonds may be a girl's best friend, but thousands of women lust for timeless elegance, glamour of pearls. But how can you tell a top-of-the-line strand from a second-rate or a fake one?
Well, we're talking about pearls. Good quality pearls have a luster that you can't compare to anything that's man-made. So it has a glow, it has a sheen that you naturally recognize to be something of beauty. It'll take your breath away if you have a good look at it.
So you can tell right away. I know you can tell when this stuff is peeling off after a few months of wearing.
Yeah, I mean, there's low quality pearls. A lot of pearls in the market are actually polished.
Yeah.
They have a natural, they use like almond meal, or they use like corn cobs to wax them up, and different technologies to create a false luster, and that'll eventually wear off.
Well, now I understand National Geographic, NGO, or one of NGO is going to come and do a film, a documentary on pearls?
Yeah, they're actually filming right now. They just
tell me
started
about that.
in
That's
April.
really exciting.
It is. I mean, it'd be nice if I was there diving in the water and getting in front of camera, but I'll wait for the next season.
So what they're filming, but there's a story. What's the story they're looking for?
Well, the idea is to follow the pearl divers and follow 4 pearl divers and just see. I mean, that's conceptually.
So share with my wonderful Golden Door audience tonight because that's what inspired me to have you here. How does a woman find these incredible pearls? What's the process that you go through to make them? And tell me more, you've been doing this for how long? Your family's been in this business a long time?
Yeah, so I mean, pearling goes back 5 generations on my mum's side to my great-great-grandfather, who had a boat called the Gift. And that was actually mutinied by pirates, these moccasins, and they ended up sailing it halfway to Singapore until they got caught. So
wow.
That was a long time, and they kicked my great-great-grandfather and a few other people off onto this island, just left them there to die, and then they ended up getting picked up and found and brought back to Broome, wherever it was. But
so okay, so tell us, you run this pearl business, tell us how it works. Tell us the secrets, what we don't know.
Well, a big misconception is that I dive, and we all dive to collect a shell, and there's a pearl in the shell. There's very rarely a pearl in the shell, and we don't open the shell to find out what we do.
Is that news to everybody here? Yeah, me too. I didn't know that. I thought every shell had a pearl, right?
We have a small percentage of the harvest that we actually kill to collect shell for the mother of pearl market, and there might be 1 in every 10,000.
Wow.
And that's a natural pearl. The value of that pearl will be hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
Up to $1 million for one pearl.
Really?
One just sold for $2 million.
Just sold?
And that's a natural pearl. So instead of trying to kill 50,000 shell to find a nice pearl, we collect the shell from the open ocean, where Australia's the only place in the world that does that, and there's South Sea pearls from Tahiti, Philippines, Burma, Indonesia, Cook Islands. We collect the wild shell, and we keep it. We operate on it. We insert a nucleus, which is a bead, a shell bead, and that comes from the Mississippi Delta. So they dredge the delta and they collect a clam. So
let me understand. There's something that's coming out of the Mississippi Delta that you're taking to Australia to make the pearl?
It goes to China first. They cut it all up into little balls.
That's amazing.
Into little beads, nuclei, and they insert that into the gonad. So this is a technology that Mikimoto, who's the famous brand, he was the son of a noodle shop owner, and he was so driven, he tried 10,000 different ways, they say, to create a pearl. He tried with gold, with lead, with glass, with wood, all these different objects, and then he finally realized, well, if it's a shell, I have to find a shell of similar density. So the best shell is obviously, if we're using a large bivalve, then find another large bivalve. So that was the Mississippi pigtoe mussel.
Really?
And
so
that was one that was easily controlled, I'd say. and it's a very thick shell, so they can cut it up and create these nice white beads, and that goes into the gonad of the oyster. And we take a piece of mantle tissue, so we actually kill one oyster in order to grow these pearls, and we cut the mantle tissue from around the lip and chop it up into little pieces, and that goes into the gonad with the nucleus, and it's like in vitro fertilization. So that would be the spermatozoa going into the ovum with the egg, which would be the nucleus, and then it grows, and we grow that for 2 years.
Wow.
And that will grow one pearl, and that will only be a small pearl, so say the size of your necklace, 10 millimeters
2
up to
years.
13 millimeters.
Wow.
And then from there we actually then reoperate, and we take that pearl out and we put in another larger nucleus, and we do it again. We look after this pearl shell in this really remote area of Australia in the northwest, area called the Kimberley, and it's like the temperature of the Greek islands, but it's wild like Alaska.
Really?
And that's where all the crocodiles are. There's 40,000-year-old Aboriginal cave paintings. You can just pull up on a boat and go into it. There's areas where there's Aboriginal bones, and I know stories of they say if you touch the bones, you die.
Wow.
And 3 people died after they went to that cave and touched the bones. It's such a strong spiritual area.
So now, do you actually physically dive down to reach them?
Yeah, you dive and you collect the shell, and I have some interesting videos that show footage of us
Yeah, we're going to do
diving
that.
and
So how do you get
fun.
the big ones?
Well,
Like
to
a
get
20
a
million
get a
one.
big pearl, I mean this one of my fingers is about 17 millimeters. So to get this is three rounds. So we'll look after that shell for 2 years on our pearl farm, and we put in another nucleus, and then we go again. So you just keep repeating the process until you get a large pearl. But to do it properly, you can't really predict what quality pearl comes out. So essentially, our last harvest, which will be our 3rd harvest, which is the 5th and 6th year that we look after the shell, we only might operate on 10,000 or 20,000 shell, and then from that we might only get a couple of thousand pearls that are 16 millimeters up, and
So
our
what
largest
about-
pearls are 20 millimeters up, and we might only have 2 pearls that big.
And who would buy those? Who lusts for that kind of a pearl? That's a giant
Well, at
pearl.
the moment, it's the Chinese. They're driving the
Is that
price.
right?
The prices for pearls, Australian South Sea pearls, have doubled in the last 2 years. And traditionally, they were very expensive in the mid-90s, when the Japanese bubble economy was really pushing South Sea pearls. And by that time, we'd been able to produce enough pearls to create big strands. I mean, we sold one through Sotheby's to, I think, Frank Sinatra for $2 million
Oh my goodness.
in the early 90s.
So are you affected by weather or?
Yeah, so we only dive from April through to October, and that's because that's the cooler months of the year. So we have less irriganji, which is a deadly toxic jellyfish, and if it stings you, you can die. And then we also get the big hurricanes, the big cyclones coming through.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be in the water
No.
between November and April.
So now you've collected all of these pearls, and they have their different values and lusters and size and shapes. Are they coming to you to look at it? Talk to me about the designing part. What happens? You create your own designs, and obviously you sell the raw pearl.
I get different coloured pearls as well. I also deal in the Tahitian black pearls as well. And I work with my father, who's a wholesaler. And
So how does a pearl become black versus white?
so a black pearl comes from Tahiti mainly. Tahiti and the Cook Islands produce black pearls, and that's from a Pinctada margifida as opposed to Pinctada maxima, which is the Australian pearl shell, which is the largest. And then there are similar Pinctada maxima species in Indonesia and also up into Burma and the Philippines.
Don't you find that interesting that it takes different kinds of shells to make different kinds of colors? Like, I didn't know that. I mean, it's a whole process.
Yeah, and then there's even a different shell that was originally found in America that produced natural freshwater pearls.
And even the gold ones, there'd be a shell. What's the shell for those beautiful
That's
gold
a
ones?
Pinctada maxima as well, but it's just naturally a gold lip. It has a heavy gold color, and so that's just the shell that they use in the Philippines.
So do the buyers come to you and they talk to us about the designing process, because you have some beautiful pieces. How does that work?
Well, I just buy whenever I can afford to buy nice pearls. I'll just buy them and I find them and I collect them. I'm kind of like a treasure hunter. So I go out and I find these nice pearls, and then when I meet someone and I think that they're special enough to want to see them, or if I have a nice space like here to be able to show all my wares, I lay them all out.
But you actually design. So that's the question.
Yeah,
Are you doing the design?
Yeah, I design like this sort of piece here is really fun. This is like a turquoise and pearl necklace. And
so where do you get your inspiration from?
this one came from living in America. And when I was 22, I was working with a friend, and we're going out to New Mexico, to Albuquerque, to the Native American communities, the missions, the Pueblos, and buying from the artists. So there I really got to learn about turquoise and about the quality of turquoise and also the spiritual properties of turquoise, which are that they connect the soul to the heavens, and they actually sprinkle turquoise dust into the graves when they bury them. And I was really enamored with turquoise, and also with the old ladies who made all the jewelry. And it's very similar in the Aboriginal communities, with the old Aboriginal ladies do all the art, and they provide for the family. So it's similar. And this necklace was that.
Does that work translate worldwide, or is that something you find only as American? Like,
design?
Yeah.
Or?
Do you find that your ideas of turquoise and taking that American idea can translate to other countries?
Yeah, I mean, turquoise is a global product now. It's sold globally, and I think that the design works for whoever's connected to that stone. It's just a stone that has an energy, so everyone's susceptible to feeling that connection.
When you go, I want to go back and ask the question, when you're wholesaling or selling those Polish to other designers, you sort of see these great stories about the sort of boxes of diamonds, and they're sort of sifting through them. Describe what that's like for your business. How does that actually happen?
Well, at the end of our harvest, we send all our pearls to Japan to get graded. So there's business partners, the Japanese business partners. So everyone involved in the pearl industry all comes from the one village that Mikimoto was from. So he masterminded the big plan 100 years ago. He was like, okay.
I read a lot about him in preparing for this. I had no idea he was that innovative.
So after he spent his whole youth trying to create the pearl, he started traveling around the world. He went to all the world fairs and created that idea of having the nude women, the divers, the ama diving for the pearls in these tanks in Paris in the early 1900s. In the Roaring 20s, there was Mikimoto pearls, and he had these beautiful Japanese ladies diving, wearing white flowing, and that created part of that beauty. But and that was actually. He got in trouble
a bit, wasn't he banned? And didn't he get into trouble in some different along his path of trying to be?
Oh, I think everyone.
Yeah, they do, don't they? But
he was a rebel.
He was a rebel.
He's a leader as well.
Yeah.
And so what he did was, when he started creating his retail brand, he then got all his friends to become business partners, and they started all their own pearl farms, and they wholesaled the pearls directly to him. So he controlled it. Wow. And then similar things happened when all his friends then said, well, there's pearls here, but I hear there's really good pearls in Burma. So they went down to Burma and started pearl farms in Burma, and they just continually moved down, following that same water, which in Australia is called the Lewin Current, which goes all the way down the coast to Australia. And we're just lucky that we actually have the largest pearl shell that grow naturally in that water, and they've been getting traded for thousands of years. The Aborigine were trading them with the Chinese and using them in traditional Aboriginal art, which, one of my cousins who's Aboriginal, he actually carves these pearl shell with these designs, totemic designs, which are, that art form is, they've found shell that, 40,000 years old. They've carbon dated them in caves hundreds of miles from the sea. Wow. So there's a long history of pearl shell and pearling, and bring it back to Mikimoto.
Your mother was Aborigine, right?
She
and
is
your
Aborigine.
Is Aborigine, and your father is Australian.
He's Australian,
just a regular Australian kind of bloke.
Yeah, he's a bit of a mix. I got a bit Scottish. Everyone in Australia is a mix of English and Scottish, and we're all a bit mongrel.
So did you get to tell me a little bit about Aborigine? I mean, who wouldn't be fascinated?
Well, yeah, I grew up actually in that Aboriginal culture because I grew up with my mum, and my dad was out pearling most of the time, and being in a small town that's traditionally since it was formed in 1883, 100 years before I was born, it's always been a third Asian who were the traditional pearl divers, were all the Malaysians and the Chinese. They all came to work in pearling. And then a third white, and they were all the pearling masters. And then a third Aboriginal, and they were just the local Aboriginal tribes. And that was my mother's tribe, who were traditionally Aboriginal. And one of my great-grandfathers was actually a Spanish Macussan pirate who jumped off his boat and swam into town before there was even really much of a town, and settled with this Aboriginal lady who's one of my great-grandmother. And so I grew up just knowing the area and growing up with my extended Aboriginal family and all my mum and her sisters. And so, and I grew up in a big block, and that's how I lived.
Is there still a big cultural, family there? Is it still the same? Or is it sort of?
I still have all my mum's family there. My grandmother's passed on, but a lot of her sisters are still there. And it's where Broome itself is probably one of the only places in Australia where you can really feel that connection to Aboriginal culture, because it's died out in all the bigger cities.
So what are two things you could tell us that we don't know about Aboriginal culture that we wish we wouldn't know? I mean, not something like crazy, but something like that we can actually handle.
Well, I mean, there's native cultures everywhere. I've learned a lot from the Native Americans here, and I've done in my travels, I've done a lot of work with different shamans, Aboriginal shamans. And
there's not Christmas. There's holidays, of course.
No, but there's no real there's no holidays.
There's no holidays.
No, we don't do holidays.
Like Easter, Valentine's Day, Grandmother's Day,
we're all Australian.
Mom's Day.
We don't have days.
Every day's a day.
Every day is a day. Every day is a good day. I don't know. There's not. I'll have to think about that one. I'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. So, how much of your business is a Mikimoto?
Well, they deal with my father and all that side of it. So I work completely separately.
You're on the creatives, on the.
Yeah, I create and design my own jewelry and do my own thing. But they buy a large amount of the Australian South Sea pearl harvest to sell, because the Koya pearl market is pretty much dead, and the water in Japan's too polluted to produce pearls there.
Right?
So Australian pearls are bought and sold.
And are you
globally.
doing things that's kind of an interesting conversation, actually, when you think about what's happening to the waters. And Australia's been quite special about protecting their waters. Do you find that to be an issue?
I mean, now we've got things like fracking on land, but we have, at one stage, we had a large corporation trying to put a gas refinery on native title land that my family had to dispute, and so that was a big thing. Well, the West Australian government's very corrupt, and they're still trying now. And so the new thing under the Abbott, this is political now, but the new thing under the Abbott government is to take all the Aborigines. They cut the funding to all the Aboriginal remote communities. Living in a remote community is a lifestyle choice. So the people who lived on the land before the whites arrived in that same area for 10, 20, 100,000 years, they are now unable to live there.
Why?
So they have to get moved off. Well, because there's a lot of resources out there, and if they're not on the land, not connected to the land,
of course.
and essentially they'll all come into Broome.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something you've learned about Aboriginal culture. We're always under attack.
Right. Really. This is fascinating. I mean, we could probably go on for a long time, but I promise to.
I'll stick to the questions, though. That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. The point of this is to kind of share some piece of information about pearls. That it's more than just a white piece of jewelry in a store. There's a whole history about how it's farmed and how it's gathered and how it's designed and how it's put together. And there's a whole culture and society, obviously, behind it about the power of those pearls. Who's the biggest who's the biggest seller of the pearls? Is there a country? Is Japan still the winner?
Yeah.
The Japanese are still the number one in pearl?
Japanese, they're the smartest, in terms of they created the pearl, they created the global wholesale distribution.
Clearly.
With their own pearls, and then they kept the distribution to distribute the Chinese freshwater pearl, the Australian South Sea pearl, the Tahitian South Sea pearl, the Indonesian South Sea pearl, the Philippine South Sea pearl. So they're the best at it. You know, they know what they're doing. They create all the best technology, and a lot of the pearls that go through Japan and through China end up getting these treatments called maishuri, which create a false luster, and you know, that's, you know, so when you're buying Japanese pearls, you often, you know, they're also making a lot of money selling their pearls because the quality is not what it seems most of the time.
Right.
But yeah, there are still very good wholesalers out there who sell natural luster and natural colour. And
Where
that's
are
the
your
most important
where are
things.
your, besides the Golden Door, of course, where are your pearls sold? Where's your line sold?
There's a shop up in Newport Beach called Amaree's. You know, I've only been in America for the last 4 years, and I've spent most of the time just doing yoga in LA, so I didn't really travel very far from LA other than to New Mexico to buy turquoise and things. So, you know, yeah, Amaree's in Newport Beach.
That's
And
nice.
then, you know, I travel around, I do trunk shows and love to meet new people. And
Will's going to stay behind for those of you who are not ready and show you actual pictures of the boats and
yeah, I've got videos of diving.
And I think it's going to be really fun to see. And he'll actually take you through it, and he'll put the screen down for those of you who want to stay. I think it'll be really fun. I hope you enjoyed tonight's conversation. It's really special, and thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.